Hello and welcome to the War Crime Emporium Nation Review and Political Chat. I'll be your host this week, Torsion. Just gonna walk through our various player nations at a high level and discuss the geopolitical landscape, if you will. And apologies if I forget some people. There have been some nation swaps recently and some players moving different locations, so bear with me. So we'll start with England. Um, Relatively quiet couple of sessions from England, but as you see now, almost complete consolidation of the English Isles, a slight expansion across the channel, so still have Calais and then expanded into Amsterdam. Um, Still plenty of miners in the lowlands, if you will, but due to imperial borders, I believe France is protecting them for the most part. Interesting, Lothringia still around, not part of the empire, so England could jump in there if they would like. We'll take a quick look at their eco and their ideas as well. Extremely strong ruler, pretty high income. I think from what I saw, only Andalusia may be higher. Um, English ideas, they're through quality, so extremely strong navy combined with their traditions. Um, Wooden wall, of course, and then almost completely through exploration ideas. Capstone here giving the two extra, or not capstone, but final idea, giving two extra colonists. Definitely going to speed things up for them there. And then a small footprint so far in the New World, if you will, just two. But as we know, um, because of their relatively strong navy, 16 heavy ships, probably number one in the world, um, they can move the majority of their armies over to the New World and quickly expand their colonial nations through the tribal. So that's going to be interesting. Currently just allied with Brandenburg, have worked relatively closely with them, were involved with Brandenburg against Denmark early in the game, as well as against Lechia last session. So pretty strong position for England, a kingmaker, if you will. Definitely not a powerhouse on mainland Europe yet. I think they missed their window of opportunity when Francia was dealing with some of the struggles after Session 1. They could have expanded into, I believe, Normandy? Yeah, they could have expanded into Normandy at that time, but have taken a more passive route. We'll move on to Francia. Currently only allied with Galval from a player perspective. Um, Relatively high maximum manpower, still drawing a ton of that from the HRE bonuses. Um, Doing pretty good on a tech perspective, a little bit behind, but nothing too major. Um, right up there from an income perspective, doing quite well. Healthy, uh, positive balance here, so no major issues. And then from an idea perspective, I would say at this time they're behind on idea groups. Jesus, that's a lot of mana to be losing. I guess a lot of these relations are probably with electors at this point, trying to keep them independent and voting for themselves. But yeah, that's a lot of dip to be losing out on. From a great power perspective, sixth, but only because of institution embracement. From a geopolitical perspective, fought Andalusia and Sicily early in the session through a coalition war, was able to expand into Andalusia's mountain fort here. Um, Obviously, the terrain here is a little bit different, so Andalusia does have a few more options from a defensible perspective than in Vanilla, but that's a strong grab there for France, grabbing the Pyrenees. Um, just because they weren't able to grab both these mountains, there is still the ability for Andalusia to come up the coast if they wanted and avoid having to take this mountain fight, but strong position for France at this time. And then we'll touch on Andalusia, obviously France's rival to the south. Um, they've expanded relatively well the first session. Second session had a sub, and then third session had that war with Francia. So I would have actually expected Andalusia to be further into Africa at this point, but still number one great power. Um, an alliance with Sicily, who is also a strong player. Currently, yeah, 500 development, number 8 on the great power list themselves. Andalusia's income extremely strong. Um, let's see, they're actually not making as much profit as I would have expected. So the difference here, +1 advisors, much better advisors here, good ruler, so good mana generation coming out of Andalusia at this point. And then almost done with quality, a couple ideas into religious. Um, what's the policy they're going for here? Morale, not, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, but doing pretty well, maybe a tiny bit behind as well from an idea perspective. And we'll pivot over into Sicily, Andalusia's ally. Ooh, also allied with the Magyars, so that's a very strong, I would say, Southern European bloc if Sicily is controlling it. Francia obviously was able to leverage a AI coalition against Sicily early in the session. The one thing to note is there's still a very large number of miners here in Central Europe, so AI AE is still an issue for Francia, Brandenburg, Magyar, Sicily. It's if it was just an AI coalition, yeah, that's one thing, but the ability for any one of these four to join a large player or a large AI coalition and lead it is something to keep in mind. So Sicily's going to want to be careful about how fast they expand. Um, Obviously, they lost Genoa in that war, it looks like. I believe Genoa was a vassal at one point. Um, so we'll see if they continue to expand into Europe and at what pace. And then, oh yeah, we'll take a look at their eco. Pretty strong eco, what you would expect from a Sicily at this point, sitting on the Genoa and Venice trade nodes. Um, Fully completed 2 idea groups, so right up there at the top with everybody. Also went religious and quality. Interesting. I guess religious has the morale. I'm not sure it's the strongest admin idea. Let's take a look at some of these other policies. Religious and divine for an extra 5% discipline. Pretty strong. Um, huh. Yeah, I'm partial to construction's pretty strong from an eco perspective. The goods produced, the production efficiency, both pretty strong, and then development cost always is king. I'm actually a big fan of leadership cost or leadership ideas because of the monarch skill, advisor cost, and all power cost. And then some interesting policies here as well. And then obviously economic, pretty strong idea group as well. Oh, that's interesting. Innovative's got some land fire damage. Huh. So yeah, I don't know about religious. We'll have to see what happens. We'll switch to the Magyars, starting on ideas. They went innovative noble academia. There must be some sort of policy that they're after here. Yeah, Cav fire. So obviously Magyar, relatively Cav focused nation, pretty close to unlocking the 20% Cav combat ability. Um, Noble Academia gives them a better ratio, +2 land leader shock, shock damage, land leader fire, yeah, cab fire, yeah. So pretty powerful ideas coming out of Magyar so far. From an eco perspective, 30, I would say that's a little bit on the low side, but they're not in the richest economic area. And with an ally like Sicily, their eco's not going to be as important. I believe they're also allied with the Seljuks, yeah. So pretty strong Magyars. We saw an extremely impressive war between Magyars, Lechia, Galvol, Bulgaria, Seljuks, and then obviously Lechia got ganked by Brandenburg, England, Norway, and Novgorod, but Magyars was still able to pull out the win and destroy Bulgaria essentially, and Galicia, Volhynia, it may not be long for this world either. Um, we'll touch on them now. Uh, Relatively rough shape, good manpower. Um, Actually, really impressive cap on that manpower there, 50,000. But eco was just a disaster. Um, when Diplo ideas first, interesting. And now pivoting into Noble Academia. I think it's a little late to go Noble Academia. Don't see any Cav bonuses in their nation. Maybe they're planning some sort of tag swap. I'm not sure what Ruthenia's ideas are. Um, yeah, not sure how I feel about this, to be honest. And then politically allied with Novgorod, allied with Francia, so still have two relatively strong allies. The Francia alliance is new, and there's some distance between the two parties, so remains to be seen how strong that is. We'll touch on Brandenburg, the former Hansa, just formed Brandenburg right at the end of the session, allied with England and Norway. Um, Relatively strong eco, 35, but for the region, pretty good eco. Um, I would say pretty far behind on ideas, especially considering a 666 ruler. Um, that'll be something to keep an eye on. Way behind on Diplotech, which, oh Jesus, for corruption, not great. Um, yeah, yeah, probably want to do something about that. Uh, but overall, reasonable manpower cap. Oh, let's check Magyar's manpower cap. Ooh, 61,000. Very impressive. Oh yeah, getting plus 35% there from steppe nomads and martial society. So back to Brandenburg, 35,000 has the ability to become Prussian at some point. I think they'll need to do a culture conversion, and then obviously would need a few more cores, but time will tell. Norway, played by yours truly, relatively low manpower cap. Um, the land up here, from a terrain perspective, not the greatest, but um, just at the end of the session was able to finish annexing Estonia, which quite a bit of grasslands, so some better opportunities for development, and then obviously um, was able to expand into two very good states in the Poland area, Mazovia and whatever. These names are hard to pronounce. From an ideas perspective, offensive, almost done with leadership, so right up there. As I mentioned before, I am a fan of the leadership ideas. Land leader shock +1, leader without upkeep +1. Not the strongest policy, but not terrible. The extra mana generation and reduced cost for advisors, I think, is pretty strong. And then all power cost, I think, is pretty powerful as well. Um, we'll see what happens long term. And then what else are we taking a look at? Oh, geopolitics. Sorry. We'll actually step back and talk about Brandenburg here. So Brandenburg obviously started as Hansa, has had some run-ins or scuffles or dust-ups with Francia. So Saxony, coming into the session, was actually a vassal of Brandenburg, but Francia used a release elector um, action as emperor to get their independence back. So no love lost between these two. And then apparently, allegedly, most likely, Brandenburg and Lechia had some sort of deal. Um, Brandenburg took an opportunity during the Magyar Lechia Galval Bulgaria War to um, take the land they wanted, even though they had that deal at the time. So it angered the Magyar and Seljuks player. We'll see what the long-term ramifications from that are. But interesting region to watch here. We've got Magyars quite strong, Sicily, Andalusia, Francia quite strong, and then in Northern Europe, Novgorod, Norway, Brandenburg, and England. Um, Probably none of them are equal to any of these four in the south, but something to keep an eye on just moving forward. Uh, yeah, back to Norway from a geopolitical perspective. Allied with Brandenburg, currently allied with Novgorod, currently expanding, almost taking advantage of opportunities. I would say haven't really exposed um, myself to a stand-up war, but seizing on moments of weakness, if you will, and diving in to expand where possible. And then also a little bit of colonial expansion now through uh, the national ideas. So something to keep an eye on is the borders between England and Norway and how the new world's going to be divvied up. It does not look like Andalusia is going colonial, so England has a strong opportunity to capitalize on Eastern America as well as the Caribbean, which are probably two of the stronger colonial regions, and then dive into Mexico as well. If England is able to get Eastern U.S., the Caribbean, and Mexico, that's a tremendous amount of money that's going to be flowing into the English Channel and potential, if they put a player in one of their colonial nations, extremely powerful nation towards the 1600s and into the 1700s, if you will. Novgorod, Eco 37, pretty good. Um, Expanding nicely, allied with Norway and Galicia Volhynia. Took a decent chunk out of the Golden Horde. I think they're just waiting timers down now at this point. Yeah, a couple more years, and they'll probably go back in on the Golden Horde. Obviously, looking to form Russia, you would assume. So expect them to gobble up this territory here, and then potentially expand into Uzbek in the longer term. Let's see what their ideas are. They went quantity, so leaning into the Russianness, if you will. I don't know what Russia's like in this mod compared to vanilla, but I know quantity's nerfed a little bit compared to vanilla, so we'll see how strong that is. Land trade, I like a lot, especially for Novgorod, especially if they're able to take Siberia and maintain control here. Astrakhan, obviously an extremely important node for any Russia player. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We've got Seljuks in Persia, right on the borders of Astrakhan, if you will. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on in the next session. Persia, relatively quiet from a Eurocentric perspective, but oh yeah, Novgorod max manpower 60,000. With quantity, that's actually not too strong. Persia here, completed strategic, extremely strong national ideas, working their way through land trade, 50 ducats, and then 50,000 manpower. Currently allied with Seljuks in, we'll call this QK. Extremely strong position for Persia. Still have the ability to expand into quite a bit of AI. Obviously, Central Europe's relatively open, but as we mentioned, there's some AE considerations there. Outside of Central Europe, the rest of Europe's extremely tight from an expansion perspective, so it's all going to come through player conflict, except for potentially Brandenburg, Francia, Sicily, and Magyars, who can still eat some AI. England, Norway, Galval, all have to expand through players at this point. Persia, tremendous expansion opportunity into India if they choose to do so, or into the Arabian Peninsula, and then potential from a trade perspective, yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to continue to move through Africa, but there's some good land down here. Their only real threats, if this Seljuk alliance holds, would be Vijay over here in India. We'll touch on them next. Behind on ideas, up to date on tech. Eco's hurting a little bit of debt. A decent amount of crown land. Should probably sell some of that and pay off some of your debt. But overall, strong position. Um, it's going to be interesting. I would have expected them to actually be a little bit larger at this point. What is there? Um, yeah, they're juggling some aggressive expansion, I guess. Um, but yeah, something to keep an eye on here. Is how quickly Vijayanagar can consolidate the Gujarat node. It's an important one from an Indian trade perspective. So if you have Coromandel, Deccan, and Gujarat, it's pretty powerful, um, especially without a Kilwa player trying to pull node out of Coromandel. You're relatively secure until European colonizers come. And as we mentioned, only England looks to be colonizing. They are allied with Ayutthaya. Ayutthaya is the former Bulgaria player, recently reseeded. Obviously, they'll get save edits to fix some of this, so not going to pay too much attention to that right now. QK. Don't know too much about this nation. Decent ideas. Seems to be Cav focus. Yep. Yeah, so similar idea choice here as our um, Magyar's player, but they went religious. Um, might make sense for them to take a look at innovative just for that pretty interesting idea policy, the Cav Fire. That's pretty cool. But we'll see what they choose to do. Um, high manpower cap. I would expect their eco. Oh wow, their eco is much higher than I expected it to be. Where is this coming from? Oh, they've got 2 gold mines. Okay, so yeah, pretty strong country here. Something for Novgorod to keep an eye on as they look to expand into Siberia. Um, the longer Novgorod gets, and the longer Russia gets, if you will, the more exposed they're going to be all along their southern border as they go. Oh, looks like they've got a ton of claims into Tibet. This is an interesting nation, interesting tag. Yeah, okay. A couple more nations here. Uh, Timagoods. Wow, a lot of claims for them. Uh, in relatively rough shape economically. Um, Jesus. Uh, I don't even know what to say. No income, high expenses. Are they in a bankruptcy? No. I, I'm just not sure you can recover from this level of corruption unless they have some sort of idea to get out of it. Oh, Jesus, don't even have an idea group. I don't know their mission tree or their style, so maybe I'm missing something. That's not practical. I don't, I don't think they're long for this world, to be honest. Obviously, they fought Han earlier, um, but yeah, rough shape for the Timmy-Goods. And then we have our Shogunate player, decent eco, um, way behind on ideas, way behind on tech. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time there, but a potentially interesting play as they look to colonize and expand. Do they go here or do they just focus on Southeast Asia? So at a high level, I think Europe's going to be very interesting next session. I think there's a lot of tension brewing between Andalusia, Sicily, and Francia. I think Brandenburg's got a target on their back, if you will, between their relations with Francia and the Magyars and Seljuks. I think Novgorod's got some choices that they have to make about how hard they want to expand to the east. And then obviously we've got the Seljuks, Persia, and QK, uh, who I think sooner rather than later will start having an impact on European affairs, if you will. So, interesting session ahead of us. Seljuks well positioned to get into the Alexandria trade node. Andalusia, yeah, it's tough. Should have already been into this part of Africa. I think, yeah, they need to figure out something with Francia and get into here. Either kill Francia and get into here, or make another deal with Francia and get into here. Um, but yeah, Andalusia's got some difficult choices to make. It's going to be interesting. Look forward to next week.